The courtroom went silent the moment the judge looked at my parents. They had sued me, their own daughter, trying to force me to pay my sister's mortgage, and they sat there smiling, like this was already over. I felt humiliated, cornered, and exposed, like my entire life had been reduced to a line item in their case. They were confident, certain the law would side with them. My sister wouldn't meet my eyes. My parents wouldn't stop smiling. They believed I would fold the way I always had. Then the judge asked one simple question. My parents froze. My sister looked away. And in that instant, I realized this case was never about money. It was about a secret they never thought would be spoken out loud in court. The silence felt like it could shatter glass. Judge Harrison adjusted her reading glasses and studied the papers before her. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. I sat at the defendant's table, hands folded in my lap, trying to control my breathing. Across the aisle, my parents, Daniel and Catherine Moore, sat beside their lawyer, looking relaxed, almost cheerful. My father wore his best suit. My mother had her church smile firmly in place. Behind them sat my older sister Amanda, 34 years old, staring at her phone like none of this concerned her. But it did concern her. This entire lawsuit was about her house, her mortgage, her debt. And somehow they wanted me to pay for it. The clerk called the case, Moore versus Moore, case number 2024-CV-8873. My stomach twisted hearing my own last name repeated like that. My parents were officially suing me, their youngest daughter, the one who had always tried to make them proud. Their lawyer, a sharp-looking woman named Ms. Brennan, stood and began outlining their case. She spoke about family obligation, financial responsibility, and moral duty. She made it sound like I was abandoning my family in their time of need. She made it sound like I was the villain. I glanced at my own lawyer, Mr. Hayes, who sat calm and quiet beside me. He gave me a small nod. "Wait," his expression said. "Just wait." My parents looked completely confident. My father leaned back slightly in his chair, fingers laced across his stomach. My mother smiled softly whenever someone glanced her way, playing the role of concerned parent perfectly. They believed this was already decided. They believed the judge would see a daughter who had money and parents who needed help, and that would be enough. They believed I would crumble under public pressure the way I always had. For 29 years, I had been the daughter who bent, who sacrificed, who made everyone else comfortable even when it hurt me. But not today. Today, I had brought evidence they didn't know existed. Ms. Brennan presented the facts like she was reading from a script. "Your Honor, the plaintiffs, Mr. and Mrs. Moore, are seeking financial assistance from their daughter for a family emergency. The defendant's sister, Amanda Moore, faces foreclosure on her home. The monthly mortgage payment is $2,400. The defendant earns over $90,000 annually as a software engineer and has no dependents. The plaintiffs believe it is reasonable to ask their daughter to contribute $1,500 monthly to prevent the family from losing this home. $1,500 a month. $18,000 a year. For a house I would never live in. For a sister who had never helped me with anything. For parents who had always chosen her over me." I thought back to when I was 16. I had earned a scholarship to a coding camp, a full summer program that could have changed my future. It cost nothing. I just needed transportation and spending money. My parents said no. "Amanda needs braces," my mother had explained. "We can't afford extras right now." But Amanda's braces weren't medically necessary. They were cosmetic. She wanted straight teeth for her junior prom photos. So I stayed home that summer, while Amanda smiled with her new braces in every photo. I told myself it was okay. Family came first. I had been telling myself that lie for 13 years. The whispers started almost immediately. People in the courtroom, strangers who had come to watch public proceedings, leaned toward each other and murmured. I caught fragments of their conversations. Her own parents. "She must be selfish. Family should help family." My face burned with humiliation. These people didn't know me. They didn't know what my family had put me through. They didn't know that I had paid for my own college while Amanda got a free ride. They didn't know I had worked 3 jobs to afford my first apartment while Amanda lived at home, rent-free until she was 30. All they saw was a daughter refusing to help her struggling family. All they saw was me being cruel. Ms. Brennan continued presenting their case, and I watched my parents carefully. They sat there looking like victims. My father's shoulders sagged just enough to seem burdened. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue even though she wasn't actually crying. They were performing. And they assumed I would sit here silently, too intimidated to fight back. They assumed I hadn't prepared. They assumed I was still the scared little girl who apologized for needing things. But Mr. Hayes had spent 3 months helping me build my defense. We had documents, we had bank records, we had emails and text messages, and we had something they didn't expect: the truth. Judge Harrison raised her hand, and Ms. Brennan stopped mid-sentence. "I'd like to ask the plaintiffs a question before we continue," the judge said. Her tone was neutral, but something in it made my spine straighten. My parents exchanged a quick glance. My father nodded confidently. "Of course, Your Honor," Ms. Brennan said. Judge Harrison looked directly at my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Moore, can you explain why your older daughter Amanda cannot pay her own mortgage?" The question hung in the air like smoke. It seemed simple, harmless even. But I watched my parents' faces change. My father's confident expression flickered. My mother's smile tightened. The silence stretched for 3 seconds. 4. 5. My parents didn't move, didn't speak. Ms. Brennan jumped in quickly. "Your Honor, Amanda is currently between jobs and—" "I asked the plaintiffs," Judge Harrison interrupted. "Not you." Ms. Brennan sat down. The judge looked at my father. "Mr. Moore?" My father cleared his throat. "Well, Your Honor, Amanda has had some difficulties finding stable employment. The job market is tough and—" "How long has she been unemployed?" the judge asked. Another pause, longer this time. "About 8 months," my father finally admitted. "And before that?" My father shifted in his seat. "She worked part-time at a boutique for about 6 months. Judge Harrison made a note. "I see." My sister Amanda finally looked up from her phone. Her face had gone pale. She stared at our parents' backs like she was silently begging them to stop talking. I understood why, because the judge was pulling at a thread that would unravel everything. Amanda wasn't unemployed because the job market was tough. Amanda was unemployed because she had never kept a job longer than 8 months in her entire adult life. She got fired from retail jobs for showing up late. She quit office jobs because she didn't like her coworkers. She walked out of restaurant positions because the work was beneath her. And every single time our parents had caught her, paid her rent, bought her groceries, made excuses. Judge Harrison flipped through the documents in front of her. According to the financial disclosures provided, Amanda Moore purchased her home 4 years ago with a significant down payment. Where did that down payment come from? My mother spoke this time, her voice tight. "We helped her." "How much did you contribute?" the judge asked. $60,000, my mother said quietly. The courtroom murmured again, louder this time. $60,000. I had asked my parents for $2,000 to help with my college textbooks once. They said they didn't have it, but they had $60,000 for Amanda. I remembered the conversation like it was yesterday. I was 22, working full-time while finishing my degree at night. My textbooks for 1 semester cost $1,900, all specialized computer science materials I couldn't find used. I had called my parents nervously, embarrassed to ask. "We're stretched thin right now, honey," my father had said. "Maybe you could take out a small loan, or work a few extra shifts." I worked a few extra shifts. I took out a loan. I ate ramen for 3 months. 2 years later, Amanda decided she wanted to buy a house. Suddenly, $60,000 appeared. When I asked my mother about it, she said, "Amanda's situation is different. She needs stability." And I hadn't? I had needed help too. But I wasn't Amanda. Ms. Brennan tried to redirect. "Your Honor, the plaintiff's generosity toward their elder daughter doesn't change the fact that—" "It changes everything," Judge Harrison interrupted. She looked at my parents again. You gave your older daughter $60,000 for a down payment. You're now asking your younger daughter to pay $1,500 monthly to cover the mortgage on that same house. Have you provided any financial assistance to your younger daughter in the past 5 years? My father opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. We helped her when she needed it, he said weakly. When? Judge Harrison pressed. He couldn't answer, because it had never happened. Judge Harrison turned to Mr. Hayes. Does the defense have documentation of financial disparities? Mr. Hayes stood smoothly. Yes, Your Honor. He handed a folder to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. Inside were years of bank statements, canceled checks, and credit card records that Mr. Hayes had helped me obtain through discovery. Every dollar my parents had given Amanda, every bill they had paid for her, every debt they had covered. Next to it was my financial history with them. $0 in assistance since I turned 18. The contrast was devastating. Judge Harrison studied the documents in silence. When she looked up, her expression had hardened. Continue, Mr. Hayes. Mr. Hayes addressed the court clearly and calmly. Your Honor, my client has been financially independent since she was 18 years old. She worked multiple jobs to pay for her education, while her sister received full parental support. She purchased her own car while her sister's vehicles were gifts. She paid her own rent while her sister lived at home for free. The plaintiffs have contributed over $150,000 to Amanda Moore's living expenses over the past 12 years. They have contributed nothing to my client during that same period. $150,000? I had done the math with Mr. Hayes, but hearing it spoken aloud still shocked me. My parents had given Amanda more money than I had earned in my first 3 years of working. I sat perfectly still, watching my parents' case collapse. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I didn't say a word. I just let the truth speak for itself. My father tried once more. Your Honor, we love both our daughters equally. We're simply asking for help during a difficult time. Judge Harrison's expression didn't change. Mr. Moore, your financial records suggest otherwise. You've established a clear pattern of supporting one child while expecting the other to be entirely self-sufficient. Now you're asking the self-sufficient child to subsidize the dependent one. That's not asking for help. That's exploitation. The word hung in the air. Exploitation. My mother's face crumpled. My father stared at his hands. The whispers returned, but they sounded different now. 150,000? They gave her nothing? That's not fair. The strangers who had judged me 5 minutes ago were now looking at my parents with suspicion. The narrative had shifted. I was no longer the selfish daughter. I was the daughter who had been treated like she didn't matter, and everyone in that courtroom could see it. Judge Harrison addressed Ms. Brennan directly. Counselor, do you have any legal precedent for requiring an adult child to financially support a sibling's mortgage? Ms. Brennan hesitated. Your Honor, we're arguing based on moral obligation, and this is a court of law, not a court of morality, Judge Harrison said. Unless the defendant signed a contract or made a verbal agreement to pay these expenses, she has no legal obligation to do so. The plaintiffs have demonstrated significant financial favoritism toward one child over another. Their request appears to be based on expectation rather than law. Ms. Brennan sat down slowly, defeat written on her face. My parents were losing, actually losing. Judge Harrison began outlining her decision, and I watched my parents' confidence drain away completely. The plaintiffs have failed to establish any legal basis for their claim. The defendant has no contractual obligation to pay her sister's mortgage. Furthermore, the financial records demonstrate a pattern of unequal treatment that undermines the plaintiff's argument about family duty. If family duty existed, it should have been applied equally to both children. My father's hands were shaking now. My mother wouldn't look at anyone. Behind them, Amanda had tears running down her face, but not because she felt bad, because she knew what came next. Judge Harrison delivered the final blow. Case dismissed. The defendant is not required to contribute to her sister's mortgage. Additionally, I'm ordering the plaintiffs to pay the defendant's legal fees in the amount of $8,500. This lawsuit was frivolous and appears to have been filed to pressure the defendant into compliance rather than resolve a legitimate legal dispute. My parents' lawyer would have to be paid too, probably another $10,000 they didn't have. They had sued me to force me to give them money. Instead, they now owed me money. The irony was almost poetic. The gavel struck, and the courtroom began to empty. I stood on shaky legs, my heart pounding. Mr. Hayes shook my hand. "Well done. You were very brave." I nodded, unable to speak yet. My parents walked toward me, and I tensed. My father opened his mouth, probably to explain, to justify, to guilt me into helping anyway. But I raised my hand. "Don't," I said, "just don't." My mother's eyes filled with real tears this time. "We're your parents. How can you treat us like this?" I stared at her, stunned by the audacity. "How could you treat me like this?" I walked out of the courthouse into bright afternoon sunlight. Behind me, I heard my father calling my name. I didn't turn around. For 29 years, I had turned around. I had listened. I had swallowed my hurt and my anger, because family was supposed to matter. But they had taught me something important today. Family is supposed to matter to everyone, not just to me. I reached my car, hands still trembling with adrenaline. My phone buzzed. A text from Amanda. "I hope you're happy now." I deleted it without responding. Over the next 2 weeks, I learned the full consequences of my parents' arrogance. They couldn't afford their lawyers' fees. They couldn't afford my legal fees. Amanda's house went into foreclosure anyway because they had no money left after the lawsuit. My father called me 6 times. I didn't answer. My mother sent me a long email about forgiveness and family loyalty. I archived it without reading past the first line. Amanda posted vague messages on social media about betrayal and selfishness. Her friends commented with support until someone linked an article about the lawsuit. Then the comments stopped. Their reputation in our small town had shattered, and I felt nothing. I focused on my life, the life I had built without their help. I got a promotion at work. I bought new furniture for my apartment. I went on a weekend trip with friends who actually cared about me. For the first time in my entire life, I felt light. No guilt weighing on me, no obligation crushing my chest, no voice in my head saying I owed them something. I had spent years believing I wasn't enough because my parents treated me like I wasn't. But the truth was simpler. I had always been enough. They just never saw it. 6 months after the lawsuit, I ran into my mother at a grocery store. She looked older, tired. She started to speak, but I shook my head. "I don't want an apology," I said. "I just want you to understand something. You spent my entire life showing me I didn't matter as much as Amanda. You're upset because I finally believed you." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I walked away, and this time I didn't feel guilty. I had spent 29 years trying to earn their love by sacrificing pieces of myself. Now I knew the truth. Love that requires you to disappear isn't love at all. I left them behind in that grocery store, in that courtroom, in that house where I was never quite enough. And I walked toward a future where I finally was.